Serio Press is an LA-based fine art print studio. They work with so many different artists like Shepard, Fairey, Ron English, Dabs, Mila. Sorry if I said any of those wrong. And they've actually been experienced with so many of our different papers, which is going to be really interesting. And we're going to be talking all about them today. So from Serio Press, we have Tony, who is the studio owner. He's also an artist and a printmaker with over 15 years of experience working with artists, galleries, and publishers. And then we have Trina, who will be here soon. She is the studio manager, and we have David, who does the marketing and is on the publishing side. So then for Legion, we have Michael Ginsberg, who is the co-founder of Legion. He created some of the papers that we'll be talking about today, like Coventry, which is Serio Press's go-to paper. Then we have Ryan. That's it. Just kidding. We have Ryan, the Legion sales manager. So if you've called Legion before, you've probably talked to Ryan. But yeah, we'll kind of jump right into it. And I mean, I've only mentioned briefly a little bit about what Serio Press does. They do a lot more than I kind of talked about already. So Ryan, if you want to jump right in, and we'll kind of get talking to Serio Press.
You know, after that intro, how can I help myself? I feel like Tito and the Jackson 5 after I need a few more things on my resume. You didn't include that I ate the most hot dogs at the company picnic. That's on my ledger.
Next time.
Yeah, next time. We'll build that one out. Thank you. First of all, thank you guys for carving out the time for us. Really, really appreciate it. I can't wait to dive in. We're going to talk about some really cool projects you guys have done on some of our more unique grades, plus one of our Clydesdale grades in Coventry. But before we get into all that, I want to kind of give you the floor and learn a little bit. Tell us the Serio Press story, how it came about, what you guys do, the two parts of your business that we had talked about. So I'll turn it over to you guys and hear your tale.
Cool. I'm Tony. I founded Serio Press, I guess. It started when I lost my job at a different print shop, and I decided that I didn't really want to go get a job. So I figured why not give it a try and start my own shop. And that was in the summer of 2013. And it was a rough start, but we're still here. So it's kind of a short version of how we came about. There's Trina. And things really, I'm going to skip a lot of time there, but things really got kind of into like a warp speed version when we brought David on, because he's been great on Instagram and stuff, and it's gone completely bonkers lately. We're booked basically through the end of the year, and things are going really great.
That's awesome.
David, let me ask you one. I'm sorry, Ryan, not that. David, you specialize in serigraph, right? Silk screen printing. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do.
Addressing Tony.
I mean, Tony. Yeah.
Yeah. We only it's only serigraphy.
Serigraphy. Got it.
Tony, how did you get into silkscreen? How did you find that path as that was sort of your life work?
I definitely didn't study it. Trina actually has more print schooling than I do. I studied graphic design and animation, and pretty quickly realized I didn't want to do that. But I was subletting a space from just a small sort of cubicle space at a print shop here in LA called Modern Multiples. And one day someone, one of the guys there didn't show up for work, and so they needed kind of an extra hand. And I said, well, I don't know anything about this, so I'd like to use my hands instead of answering phones and typing on my laptop. And it just kind of kept boiling from there.
Was that Lisa Duato?
Her brother Richard was the owner there.
Right.
But yeah, Lisa's been involved lately.
And Montana.
Montana pretty much took it over right now. I think he's the guy running it all right now.
Yeah, yeah.
On Serio Press, you guys, the business sort of falls into two different buckets, right? There's contract end of it and the publishing. And I know one you had been in for a long time. The other one is really starting to ramp up. I don't know who I'm directed at. Maybe David or Tony.
I think either one of them. Trina, you're muted, by the way.
I know. Yeah, I was just like,
Would either one of you like to talk on that?
Yeah, I can jump in for a second. I mean, Serio Press has been doing contract work for most of the last decade, and they have worked with some of the most like interesting and contemporary artists, especially in the urban scene. And for us, the publishing side of things has really been an opportunity to take a lot of the technical process that Tony's exploring and use it as a way of collaborating with other artists. So in Tony's personal practice, he's actually doing some really cool stuff with screen printing that I haven't seen any other printmakers doing. And so finding artists that are a really good fit for these new techniques that Tony's developing has been a lot of fun for us. And shortly we'll show you some pics and some sneak peeks of some of those upcoming projects, and just how like some of the media, some of the papers that we've sourced from Legion have played a really like pivotal role in building these prints. So we're excited to show you this.
Oh, great.
There's one that I'm thinking I've never heard of it before. I've never seen. I haven't even seen it when we first talked. So I'm really excited to see that one. A little teaser for the end for the audience. Okay, so that's sort of Serio Press in a nutshell. Can you walk us through? Artist comes in or a job comes in. How does the job and the project find a paper? What does that process look like? How do you match a paper with the work?
I can speak to that. So I'm the studio manager, and I do a lot of the correspondence and the communication with the artists. Well, David does as well, but he's more on the public side. So our main source of project work is through contract work, and a lot of the artists, if they're not familiar with serigraphy or screen printing or printmaking, they kind of leave it up to us. And I would say 90% of our papers are the Coventry Rag line of papers, because they're 100% cotton. They're the only ones that come in large format sheets. So I think the largest sheet is 44 by 60. And we actually utilize that size. And so because of the price point and the availability of the different sizes, because a lot of printmaking papers are limited to 22 by 30 or 30 by 44, we end up using that one a lot. And it's just our like go-to paper. For the people who are looking for specific textures or a little bit more of a specialty look or feel, I end up, if they can't come over, especially during the pandemic, which they weren't able to come over, or if they're not local to us, we will send them pictures, we'll have conversation back and forth on what they're looking for. And so we're able to make recommendations that way. But a lot of times they won't come to us, or sometimes they actually come to us wanting something less expensive, like more of like a poster paper, and then I end up trying to talk them out of it because we want to use a nicer paper. We like the
thank you.
And
The
Trina,
world thanks you, Tree.
Trina, it adds value also. I mean, that's part of the selling part. It adds value to the piece of art.
Yeah. Well, I think people even don't realize that there are other papers, because they'll come to us and they'll say, oh, can we get this on Cougar? Or sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to say other.
Sure. Yeah,
but,
of course.
They're cellulose papers. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. They're just more commercial. And then they come to us and they're like, oh, we want something really nice. And then I was like, well, if you want something really nice, then you might want to do 100% cotton versus a cellulose paper. And even with the cellulose papers that Legion carries, we really appreciate their line because they're usually virgin cellulose.
Right.
And I try to even steer them that way.
So like Color Plan, for instance, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And that's Go ahead. Sorry, Tom.
I was just going to mention Serio because the Serio Ultra Black, that's a good one.
Oh, yeah, we're going to do one of those projects today, right? Serial Ultra Black.
Yeah, we'll
Show
be
one of those?
off of a
Yeah.
few of the additions we did on those.
Yeah. And that was what I was going to kind of say, because so Coventry is sort of the default for you guys. And it, for me personally, whatever I'm picking up a silkscreen call, if somebody calls in and we don't know each other, my go-to is always Coventry first. Coventry, one, it's super versatile, 2 different services, bunch of different formats, small and large, and it could take a ton of layers. And it's sort of my go-to, but I don't know if that's because I make it and I'm sipping the Kool-Aid, but you're kind of ringing that bell too, right?
You know, it's interesting, Ryan, but let me just tell you real quick. I mean, a little history behind Coventry.
Yeah,
it came out, and I mentioned this to you, David, before. I created Coventry Rag in 1971. And I created it for, and you probably know the name, I mean, although he's gone a long time, I created it for Urte, who was a fashion designer and wanted to build up literally 125 plus colors with gold embellishment. And he needed a paper that really was very, very stable. So what I did is I went to the mill and I said, hey, look, I need dimensional stability beyond. And we had it, and then they made it for me, and it's become the go-to paper for serigraph. Yeah.
Real quick, Mike, because some people might not know, what is dimensional stability?
Dimensional stability is a paper not to give and get as little as possible. You know, you want a paper that's going to be able, and Tony, you'll know this for sure. You want a paper that when you're registering color, especially when you're putting down an enormous amount of colors, you want to be able to have that paper hold registration. Having said that, and we can all look up this word, the word hygroscopic comes into play. And what does hygroscopic mean? It's the ability, and all papers have it, it's the ability to take on and give off moisture. And when you do that with a sheet of paper, it contracts, expands and contracts. Coventry Rag formulation had built in just the right amount of moisture to allow it to be stable. But, you know, there's a key to that. And I'm sure that, you know, as a printer, Tony, you know that when you get paper, and especially cotton fiber paper, you got to let it adjust to the environment. You got to open it up. You got to let it sit. You got to let it breathe. You got to let it, well, you got to welcome it to your new home. There are printers out there that, whether they be offset printers or regular printers, are in such a rush to get a job done, they'll take it, as soon as it walks in the door, they'll throw it on. You can't do that. You can't do that, especially with cotton fiber sheets. You got to let it adjust and breathe.
Yeah.
I wish I had been explained that 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's only probably been maybe, I think early on, maybe like 2014. So, you know, maybe 6 or 7 years, I finally thought like, this paper is changing shape.
Yeah.
Right after the first color. So I started
Yeah.
taking it out and racking it as if I had already printed a color, let it adjust to the humidity, the temperature, all of that. And things have been great ever since.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you probably have fans circulating as well, right? Or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a humidifier. Yeah.
Yeah, that helps. That helps a lot.
Just to keep a stable environment.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we got Ryan, I think we have a lot to cover, right?
Well, yeah, we were going to kind of dive into some of the really cool projects that we've done, or you guys have done recently. We've supplied the paper for, but if we want to dive into those, I'd love to. And a few come to mind, but if you guys want to take the reins on that, Serio, that would be awesome.
Jen Stark is a really good example of something that's kind of awesome and chaotic and trippy on a perfect fit for the Mirri holographic. This is just a close-up of the split fountain, which, if nobody knows what that is, that's just blending multiple colors on one screen to make a linear gradient. So this, it's, I think this is 5 or 6 different colors. From the top, it goes red, yellow, green, blue, to like a purple and a magenta. These are all fluorescent colors.
All right.
And so after, this is a confusing one because you could call it 10 colors, but it's 2 5 fountains run perpendicular to each other. So it creates this kind of wacky mix of, you know, interaction with different colors. That's just a photo of, you know, you can see all that rainbow kind of action in the back. That's the Mirri holographic. Moving on, there's a photo of, you know, from a different angle, or actually, I guess this is a video.
Tony, that would have been a nightmare if you had to print each color separately, huh?
Yeah, and also in different directions.
Yeah.
Yeah, because each split fountain goes perpendicular to each other. Yeah, it was a little bit more than a nightmare.
Yeah.
But we got really good results. So
that's a great piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is just kind of a photo of, you know, the same paper but blank on the rack. At the top it looks silver, but you can see where it kind of starts glowing down the rack. I'm gonna escape out of here.
That's a cool shot.
Yeah, that's, you know, just actually that's something that Michael was just talking about. Even with the Mirri, although it's more stable because it has whatever, I don't know if that's like a plastic coating or whatever the application is. I still just put it out to get used to the environment.
So just about to say that has recently become a favorite of silk screeners, the Mirri line, but it was originally a commercial and packaging grade. So it's a line of really high-end, smooth foil board product. So that top there, I saw somebody ask a question of what is the actual silver. It's our Mirri line. That's our umbrella brand, but that's a metallized polyester. And it comes in a lot of different flavors, from an embossed sparkle that kind of looks like a glitter, but it's really just embossed metal, to a bunch of different colors, to this rainbow you see here. But key to that is letting it acclimate. As Michael said about the cotton, the same would go for anytime you have a paper or board, in this instance, with 2 different types of, I don't want to say fiber in this situation, but surfaces on each side. One is a metal that doesn't absorb any moisture, and the back is a paper that does absorb moisture. So it needs to acclimate before you print it, or else it's going to half pipe. And this is exactly as you see it here. So I mean, you're on the right track.
Yeah, and it totally does that. It can, even with we use mostly acrylic ink, and even with enough ink on there, the ink also contracts when it dries, and it can get really, really curly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, like one side doesn't absorb any water at all, and the other one does. So, but once it settles, then you're good to use it for the most part.
Totally.
Got it.
That's awesome. Those are great. And it's the perfect sort of, you know, that we just talked about, matching the right image with the right surface. And that's a great marriage right there.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we can maybe do a little bit of, I didn't have time to photograph one of the prints, but I'll be able to show it in person. I think the Serio Ultra Black is a good one.
Okay.
So
the Shepard print, I don't know if that's is that on the custom made Coventry?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is print for Shepard Fairey, for Obey Giant. We do a lot of their large format printing. They have poster size prints that are 18 by 24 that with UV commercially printed processes. But we do all of the, not all of them, but we do a lot of the large format prints. And Shepard, for the longest time, he had us printing this very, very transparent cream color in the background on top of the Coventry. But then recently he had Legion Paper custom make this color, and so the cream color is actually the Coventry paper. So we wanted to show.
Yeah, so we made a cream Coventry.
We matched it very, very close too. Is dead on. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually we were very thankful because every time we go to print that transparent color, it's really tricky actually.
Oh, really? Wow.
So yeah, so I just wanted to mention that. And then if you wanted to move forward to the Serio Ultra Black. So this is Serio Ultra Black, not Serio Ultra Black. I know it's very similar.
Yeah.
But we like the Serio Ultra Black because it is a very, very black paper. Sometimes we'll use the arch. I don't know if it's pronounced arch or arches.
It's called, it's arch.
It is arch. Okay, that's what
Yeah.
I thought. French,
Yep.
so. I thought that's
Which
what
is not really black. It's a blue black more than it is a black.
Yeah, the fine art cotton black papers are not very saturated black. They are a little bit lighter, and so people really want that concentrated black paper. And so when Legion started carrying the Serio Ultra Black, we started recommending it to people. It isn't cotton, but it is. I think it is. Is it still virgin cellulose?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
And it has a really, really beautiful, rich black color to it. And this print was for an artist named Cryptik. And it has, so we printed an adhesive layer, and then well, actually Cryptik was in the studio and he was doing this as well. He was going through and adding sand on top of it. So this print actually has sand on it.
It's great. It's a great piece. You know, if you're interested in, and if you don't have samples, we can send them out, Drina. We came out with the Stonehenge Aqua in black as a 100% cotton fiber. And it's not only available, it's cold press finish as well as a hot press finish. Really beautiful, really beautiful. We'll get you some samples.
Awesome. Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah. It might not come through on the computer screen for those watching, but the first time we ever got Sirio Ultra Black, and you can speak to this, Michael, that made every other black look like gray.
It still
I don't know if you
still
felt
does, Ryan. It still
does, right? Yep. I've never seen that thing was black hole black, midnight black. We thought we had blacks before and they were pretty dark.
Yeah.
This thing, it's as black as you can imagine, sucks the light out of the room. Which just makes the contrast all the more. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, it's really nice. And then I think we have another Cryptik print done on that same black, but with a metallic. I do have to say though, screen printing metallics is not super easy because screen printing, the ink goes through such a fine mesh, and in order for metallics to really shine, when you paint a metallic, you get the brush strokes and the light, the irregularity of all those different irregularities of the brush strokes highlights the metallic nature of the pigment. But when you screen print it, it flattens it all, so there's less irregularity for the light to hit off of. So if you want to scroll forward to the next, so this is a metallic on the Serio. Is this the Serio Ultra Black as well? Yeah. And same artist, Cryptik. This one doesn't show the black nature of the paper quite as well, but it could be the lighting.
It is, but usually when we consider black paper, it feels like we don't have a choice now, and it has to be the Serio Ultra Black.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, Ryan, it makes everything else look like a slightly dark gray.
Yeah. It also, you know, what's beautiful about it too, Tony, is it comes in such a heavy weight. You know?
Yeah.
Totally. That goes up to what, maybe like
350 gram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've never seen anything like it till this day. We brought that in 5 years ago or so.
Yeah.
At this point.
Black magic.
We're renaming it.
What other pictures do we have, Tony?
Sean Norvet is Coventry, but we wanted to show it off because it's a really just impressive feat of serigraphy.
Yeah, it is.
How many colors, Tony?
I think that ended up being 20 with, we wanted to deepen the blacks with a gloss. So I think it was 20 with the gloss, or like a semi-gloss.
Now, Tony, when you print, do you put down a white, first hit, or you don't?
No,
You don't. You go right
not
to,
unless there's, usually no.
so you go right to color, and you
Yeah.
just right.
Yeah, that white could act as a primer. And I think I remember asking you that a while ago, like why you don't do that. And you said that it really doesn't seem to make that big of a difference for you when you print. Is that right?
It depends on the job, but if, I've done that in the past just as, it's almost like a gesso to stabilize the paper, but
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah. And ever since I've been just kind of keeping a nice steady environment in the studio portion of our shop, sometimes I've found it more problematic because if I put a bunch of white down, it starts like turning into potato chips a little bit, it gets wavy. Generally don't, but
Tony,
sometimes.
Yeah, but to your point, it almost acts as a sealer for the surface of the sheet, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can change the way solid, the way colors soak into the paper. The first few kind of
Right.
really grab into the paper, but generally that's not something that I do. It's
This is a great piece. This is really a great piece.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe David, would you like to speak on this piece at all?
If you keep scrolling, there should be a little video. You can kind of show off some of the colors. There you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that 20-second one. Just so you can see kind of the transition of the colors up close. I think what's really impressive about this print is just kind of how many optical colors are achieved with 20 screens printed. It's just a really beautiful print, and we're all really pleased with how this one came out.
And you guys is that a hand decal I see on that? Are you guys
Yes.
decaling that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. That is awesome.
But speaking of published editions, let's jump into one of our upcoming ones next, the David Ha, because this is an example of a print where Tony had an idea, and so Tony wanted to create texture through screen printing. And there's a lot of ways to incorporate texture into printmaking. You've embossing, you've debossing, you've different types of intaglio printing. But Tony wanted to create texture solely with ink on paper. And so he had the idea of printing a layer repeatedly until the ink built up a visible and tactile amount of texture. And so we reached out to this artist, David Ha, whose original art practice is based in paper collage. So he cuts out paper and stacks it and glues it together. And we wanted to create a print that kind of honored the way that he creates his work and give it the look and feel of paper that had been stacked on top of each other. So we isolated portions of this print, and Tony printed the layers repeatedly until there was a visible raise or a bump caused by the ink layers repeating.
Wow.
And so yeah, if you go to some of those profile pictures, wow, Tony, there you go. So that's just ink on paper.
Really? That's ink on, really? Wow.
And
Michael, have you ever seen anything like this?
No, not really. No, I never have. No.
And so this is kind of a new process that we've been experimenting with. And this is a release that we have coming up in a few weeks. It'll be our first time kind of showing it off to the world. We haven't really talked about this yet. But since it was our first time doing this, it was Tony's first time really building this much texture on a print, we didn't know how the papers were going to respond to it and we were really concerned about, a paper that might be too loose. Any movement could cause this texture building to warp. And so, we went with the museum board, the Rising,
Right.
which is 500 GSM. It's very rigid. And we felt a lot more secure in building this texture because we had that really rigid, stable media to work off of.
Right. Right. Good move.
Yeah, and
This is amazing. This is amazing.
I want to give credit to Justin Graham, who helped us print this. He's not here.
He nailed it.
Yeah.
So
There's
this is David, and this is
Go ahead.
David. This is a video of David. He goes in and he likes to add. We're releasing 15 HPMs, which are hand painted, and so he's going back in and he's adding more collage elements on top of the print already for the special variant edition.
No, it's very cool.
This is very cool. Never seen anything like this. This is there's a dimensionality to this.
So in order to
Unreal.
get that dimension, Tony, what do you have to mask out around the areas that you're going to build up?
It's really just using a stencil, and we went, I think, with 3 different layers, if you can think of them as like plateaus, because they're stacked up. We're simulating a stacked up paper kind of thing. So it's just a super loose mesh. The lowest I usually go is 110.
Right.
So we printed the 110 mesh. I think each plateau was 8 layers. So it just keeps stacking up and stacking. And then I don't know if.
Yeah, that's a mid plateau. That's not even one of the highest levels.
You can even see here, at like where the paper is cut on the edge, it's almost like another layer of paper on top.
Yeah. Very cool.
And that is very thick paper.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the 2-ply, I think, 500 or 600 GSM.
Right.
It's the 500 GSM.
500.
Yeah. 2-ply is 500. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really just stacking up, just printing over and over until we can feel something with our fingers,
Wow.
How many of these did you do?
in the edition.
Yes.
I think David probably knows that better than
It's
I
an
do.
addition. It's an addition of 40 plus 15 HPMs.
Wow.
So how long does that take with all the stacking?
Okay, so
Still going? Still going?
We don't want to talk about that.
We can, all right, sorry, salt in the wound.
No,
That's
but-
my fault.
well,
Sorry, I'm going to be right back. Sorry.
this was
There's
happening.
still a lot of PTSD from this production. Clearly.
I just
It
opened
was
up a big
happening
wound. That was me.
Yeah.
David,
So-
how large is this piece?
I believe it's 16 by 21. Is that right, Tree?
Yeah, it's 16 by 20.
Got it.
What's the largest you've printed ever? Maybe ever is a tough one, but.
Well, ever we've actually Tony has done some really large format canvases, and he actually tiled the screens, and so he was able to piece them
Oh,
together.
wow.
But the largest that we can print right now in our studio, the actual print area is 38 by 58.
Okay.
So we did that on a 44 by 60 sheet. But I think
it.
that when we were at Modern Multiples, we actually printed larger than that because I think they had a larger exposure unit or something than we
So
did here.
So that's why that.
Trey,
Go
you
ahead.
mean, I don't know whether you know this, and we stocked the Coventry 335 gram in a 60-inch wide roll. In
Yeah,
Smithers.
yeah, and actually we did an print for this artist that we're not allowed to say their name because we had to sign an NDA, but we ended up having to do something on a roll with them, so we had to cut the paper off the roll and then we had to flatten it. It took a really long time, so we have done that before, but it's just so much work that we don't really try to go after that too much.
Wow.
Yeah. Our production, our schedule, like Tony was saying, is so full that we just kind of we're just kind of constantly like as soon as the project's over, we're on to the next project, and
Yeah.
it's just moving.
Yeah.
Good problem.
Yeah.
So would you say 3858 is the largest?
That's the largest print
The
area.
print area.
So,
So the
yeah.
3850 Coventry plays really well into that.
Yeah, and we've actually printed on the 44 by 60 because, you know, with the borders and
Right.
All right. Yep.
Right.
yeah.
This
And
is
Tony will
amazing.
tell you better about the largest size he's ever done, because I'm sure he's done other things at Modern Multiples that were really large.
Yeah, like, as far as the printing part with screens, the largest is pretty much, we stuck around the 44 by 60 Coventry size. But I think my first interaction a long time ago was with, I think it was the Rising Museum board, because I think that comes even larger.
60 by 104.
Yeah, so I remember printing, we printed, this is when I was at Modern Multiples. We printed something for, I think his name was Hirsch Perlman, if I'm correct. I think that was with Blum and Poe. I might be wrong about that, but they were just gigantic sheets of this museum board. And I think that was at that size, you kind of have to go with like the 4 or 8 ply.
Yeah.
But
Just to handle it. Yeah.
Tony,
yeah,
I bet
totally.
I bet you love building a crate to ship that, right?
Luckily, that was over on the west side of LA, and the gallery was right down La Cienega, so we didn't have to crate it. They just picked it up.
Yeah.
And then the other publishing project that we're working on is by this artist named Hiejin Yoo. And we chose the Arch 88. Is that, yeah, for this particular project, because even though it's a little bit of a finer, it's I think it's a 350 GSM, but it actually has a really lightweight feel to it. And we chose this one because the inks on it look incredible.
Yeah.
So we and you can't really get it from the pictures. You kind of have to feel it in real life, but it works really well. And it's not quite done yet. We're still on the final layers, the final color layers this week. We're going to be finishing it, but this is and this paper is so it is almost like fabric. When you move it around, it's really soft, and it's really beautiful.
And you got to be careful handling it too, because it has no sizing at all.
Yeah.
It's super delicate.
For that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a specific way to handle paper. When I first started working at Modern Multiples, I remember going out onto the production floor, and Tony was printing, and they were doing something on like a 38 by 50 sheet or something. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna pick up this piece of paper and I'm gonna put it on the rack. And it was so crazy. I didn't realize you had to actually have experience. You have to curl it a certain way, and then like push it against your body so it stays stiff, because if you get any sort of bending in there, it dings the paper.
It does. Correct.
Absolutely.
David, was there you wanted to add to that, the Hiejin print?
I mean, not necessarily. That's still a work in progress. We're going to be finishing it this week. I'm looking forward to seeing it tomorrow. I'll be driving down to LA to see it in person. I'm excited.
How many colors is this, David?
That would be a Tony question. What are we at?
I think it's going to be about the same as Sean Norvet. I think it'll be close to 20.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
And
Tony,
I like the deadline you gave me, David. We're finishing it this week.
Yeah.
We get to ask this question a lot, like how we do these complex paintings, and because we don't actually start with spot colors. We start with a CMYK, but instead of using a CMYK halftone, which has a regular pattern, we use a diffusion, which is like a random dither. And so we start with the CMYK, and then we go, and then Tony goes back in, and then he separates out spot colors, because that CMYK layer, it kind of sets a foundation for us to work with. And it kind of fills in like this little subtle little midtones that we might not do a spot color for. But it really helps us, like with the Sean Norvet and the Hiejin Yoo, it helps us to kind of minimize the amount of colors. Because I mean, we could just keep going forever and do spot colors. We could do like 50 spot colors, but we're trying to be smart and try to use our time wisely and efficiently. So that CMYK base layer helps us to kind of map out where we want to move with the print. So Tony actually separates the colors while he's printing, and we decide what color to focus on next and what colors to bring forward. And so the whole thing is actually a really creative process. It's not, the color separations aren't done beforehand.
Now, Trina, let me ask you a question. In terms of color separations and chromist work, you do everything in-house, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's where Tony's background in graphic design really helps, because he, like he said, he didn't go to school for printmaking, but he has a really strong familiarity with graphic design. And so he's able to utilize Photoshop to do the color separations.
Right.
And since he's the printer, he knows what things he wants to bring forward and things he wants to adjust, as opposed to having someone else do the color separations. He can make the choices himself. And so even though these reproductions of paintings like the Sean and the Hiejin prints, even though they seem like they're really straightforward, they're really a hugely creative process on Tony's part and his separations, because he's building it as he's going along.
Right,
After each color, he's building the next color.
Right.
Oh, thank you.
And then I help.
After I mess it all up, then Trina comes and mixes a magical color that fixes everything.
But it's really easy for me because I'm not printing it. I can just come in and say, yeah, this needs to be done. And he's like, oh. Yeah.
What's that next layer there of images? If you go down, oh yeah, on the bottom left, what is that?
That's
yes.
gold.
So this is Cryptik again. We're trying to show the different like pool papers that we've used, and this is on the Mirri gold. So this actually, the metallic that's showing through is the Mirri gold, and you can see the gold around the edges of the photo as well.
And on the other one, it was reversed. You were printing the metal, right? The metallic. The other one we showed before, where we were printing metal ink, this is the metal shining through, and you're printing the blue on it. Yeah, and the blue is a flat blue. It's a flat matte color. And then so the negative space where the gold is showing through is the paper behind it. So that really pops.
He wanted to be able to use the gold and get this sort of shadow effect where the different elements of his brushwork are coming into the foreground or into the background. So we had some transparent gloss layers, really transparent black gloss layers that really came out. It was a learning experience for me, but really came out fantastic.
It looks amazing. I can only imagine in person. On the screen, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have left here, Paige, how much time do we have left? Do you want to take some questions?
Yeah, I actually have a few questions. So one is for David, and this is when you're sharing artists' work. Does Serio Press share it first, or do you ask the artist who is sharing the artwork first, or how does that work when you're starting to publish artwork?
I mean, so we'll often share artists' work that we're not necessarily working with or like have intentions to do so. We just love the work and are happy to share it. If we're collaborating with an artist and have an upcoming publication, we'll usually, start teasing it together and, try to coordinate, details and release posting. But it's a pretty organic process. Like with David Ha, it was really like Tony had this idea of texture building in prints, and we spent a lot of time reviewing artists' work that we thought we could apply that texture building process to in a way that it would complement their original work. And so we were really happy that David was excited to collaborate with us because it did fit so well, just that texture layering, kind of mimicking his paper collage style. And
Right.
sometimes as we, like, for example, with the David Ha, we've shown a few other artists we work with this process and, the resulting texture that we're able to achieve. And that in turn, a lot of our existing clientele has been excited by that and wants to experiment with it. So it kind of, we'll collaborate with one artist in something, and then as people see the process, I think a lot of new people come in and are interested to experiment with it as well.
Yeah, I think seeing the process behind it and how you guys post that on your Instagram is really cool. Like from start to finish looks awesome.
David, really getting away from just conventional flat serigraph, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'm a print collector. Like long before I joined the Serio Press team, I was just a nerdy print collector, and I want us to make prints that we get excited about, and in turn that our artists and our collectors and everyone gets excited about. We want to make it a little bit like fun and unconventional, and
Right.
It's trying to do things that no one else is doing right now.
Good
And
idea.
how many artists come in saying, this is the exact paper I want, as opposed to you choosing the paper, kind of giving suggestions on what they should be choosing?
It's really rare actually when people know what paper they want. And if they do, it's usually because it's from a previous project that they've done, and they're like, oh, I want the Coventry again, because that's the paper we used last time. If it's an artist that we've never worked with, though we're really not taking on a lot of new clients anymore, just because it's so full. But yeah, I would say it is really rare that people have something in mind, unless it's most of the time they're like, oh, I want to try something different, and like, do you have any suggestions?
Got it.
Or even it may not be a specific type of paper, but they're wanting either something they're like, I want a cream paper, I want a black paper, I want to like, is there anything really wacky? And then we can kind of help them through that.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And what is the most challenging project you've ever had to do?
All of them.
Is it the one we just saw?
No, Tony, he puts all of his energy into every single project. So it seems like every single one of them is like life or death sometimes. But Tony, you can answer.
It's a really tough question. I'm thinking mostly like, what's the thing that I've gotten most frustrated with, this isn't about like getting frustrated with the artist, it just in a technical sense with printing. Man, my mind is going blank.
But Tony, I would think that almost every one of these prints looks like it's an evolution of creativity. I mean, as you're going, I mean, you're creating, or you see something new that can be unbelievably, beautiful.
Yeah, and almost every print is also a learning experience for me. I think that's why, like, we've gotten to a place where we can really offer a lot of knowledge or experience. I wish I could come up with a specific one. I mean, like, just because I'm looking at it, I think that Jen Stark one that we looked at on the Mirri holographic was and actually, like you mentioned it, you mentioned the word Michael Nightmare before I did, and that thing was incredibly difficult. I guess I'll go with that. Maybe like maybe we'll have another like 5-second Zoom call in a month, and because that's when I'll remember something.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stump you.
Yeah, this is your final answer, Tony. You get no more.
There have been even some of the ones at Modern Multiples. You know, we've done prints with Ron English and Carlos Amaraz, and like these ones that would just be, they'd be 30, 40, 50 colors, and it felt like on the last color, it would feel unreal that it was over, because like you've been just staring at these like small parts of an image to where you can't even, I find it sometimes difficult to back up and even see what the print is an image of, because there's just too much time spent on these little tiny details and figuring out whether they're printing correctly or whether they're registered correctly or whatever, and it gets really kind of just confusing. But some of those big ones like the Amaraz and Frank Romero, there was a guy Eric Montoya, and Ron English was a really, really tough one.
You know, I mean, you know, Tony, to that point, it's really got to be challenging and fun for you in the creativity part of it. You know, I mean, as you said, you're learning with every single edition that you're doing.
Well, one of the most important parts of the insane amount of jobs that we've done is that I constantly make mistakes, and when I make mistakes, they give me ideas to try to explore something that I would normally not even really even understand was a possibility.
Yeah, I can see
that's where the stuff like the David Ha, the layering, we have a lot of ideas that we're going to be working on the next year that are going to be really fun.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Tony, if you refresh the Google Photos albums, there's a few new photos, including a little video of the Cryptik that kind of better explains the sand print.
I think it's at the bottom.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's actually the artist. He was applying the sand himself, and it was he had 4 different colors of sand. It went from a kind of a dark, almost black gray, up to, there was like a copper and then a gold and then a light gold. So it's sort of like a split fountain of sand being applied to the print.
Wow, that's very cool.
And we do have a question, and anyone can answer this, maybe Michael, but they want you to talk about the handling properties of Coventry versus maybe some other popular rags like Reeves BFK or Somerset or Arch 88.
Well, the handling issue is very simple, but you know, Tony and Trina, you would be, you know, from a functional standpoint, you would be better off answering this. But if a sheet size is larger than 22 by 30, don't try and handle it by yourself.
Yeah, especially if you're beginning, definitely. It's very unwieldy. You have to start doing it, and you ruin a bunch of paper along the way, but it takes practice and experience. And at a certain point, I think one of the most important things I realized about paper, and at those larger sizes, when I'm handling alone the 44 by 60 or the 38 by 50, it's not so much about trying to control the paper. It's about letting it like interact with the air that's around the paper, because you're in an environment where there's resistance, and even like there are just kind of ways to move paper. It's almost like a dance. It's about letting it be part of the air around it. you
Right,
know?
right. Right.
Oh, Aaron is asking, he also wants to know about how the papers, the other papers, compare to Coventry, the way that it holds ink and expands and contracts, etc.
I haven't noticed a ton of difference unless there's, I guess, a difference in thickness, which isn't necessarily weight, but
Well,
My-
yeah, yeah.
my
I'd
Michael
also
might
say-
be better at this.
Well, also, Tony, sizing has a lot to do with it. Take a sheet like the RC88 has no internal sizing, no surface sizing at all. So if any paper was going to take on and give off moisture, that would be the sheet of paper that would be doing it more than anything. Coventry is internal as well as external. It has sizing in it, so it's going to give you more stability and handle better. I mean, it's really upon you, the printer, to take everything into consideration in terms of it's a work of art. You got to really pay attention to how you handle the product.
Yeah, good point. I think now I feel like I need to become a paper maker so that I understand all that a little bit better.
Yeah. Just call me. I'll walk you through it.
But I didn't know that about the RC88, and it totally makes sense because that paper is so, I don't want to say difficult, but it's difficult. It's really, really delicate.
And, Tony, put it under a faucet and it'll go right through the sheet.
A little bit to that question. I would say like handling like the way they feel, the more traditional screen printing, or not screen printing, the traditional printmaking papers tend to feel a little bit softer and they are a little bit more floppy. But then when it comes to like a 22 by 30 sheet, I don't think there's a huge difference in how the ink lays down and how they expand and contract, because for us, we notice it more on large format paper, because large format we just are putting more ink onto it. For a 22 by 30 sheet, sorry.
I hear birds.
30 sheet, unless you're putting like a rectangle that fills almost the entire field on a 110 mesh, I don't think you're gonna notice as huge of a difference with the handling and how.
Well, Tree, and with reference to the Reeves or the Arch, printmaking grades, or the Somerset printmaking grades, they all have internal sizing with a minimal amount of surface sizing.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is it was primarily made, we know that you can silk screen on everything, right? Basically.
Yeah.
So these papers were predominantly made for etching, and lithography. So when you're putting a sheet of Somerset or Arch or Reeves through an etching press, that surface has to be able to hold, to take that ink. So you can't have a lot of surface sizing on it at all, to make it suitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah, so for screen printing, I think then the Coventry would be more ideal because it has that surface sizing.
Exactly. It's a little bit harder, a little bit more, suitable. Yeah.
It feels more durable to me.
It is.
Like it feel the durability of
it's
it.
more forgiving.
Yeah.
Yeah, but part of me always thought, just in my head, when I think about it on a macro level, I thought maybe the papers like Arch 88, and maybe even Stonehenge, when we're deckling the paper, it feels like it's a shorter, shorter fiber, but maybe that's more just the lack of sizing or the binder. Maybe both.
It could be the refinement of the fiber, making it a shorter fiber when the paper's made.
Yeah.
But they all deckle very, very well. They all hand tear very, very well.
Fantastically.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's anything else. Did you want to show anything from the studio, or did we see it through the Google Photos?
Any thoughts, Trina and David?
Unless there was anything that you wanted to show on the webcam.
Oh, sorry. I was typing an answer. What was the question?
Was
Is there anything that you wanted to show through the webcam as opposed to the Google
Are those
Photos?
Photos?
What is the fight the power one? I don't think we did that one. And
No.
is that a glow in the dark ink?
Yeah. So those go to in the dark. So these are printed.
This is Patrick Martinez. He does a lot of installations.
What is that done on? Is that Ultra Black as well?
That would have been Coventry.
No, we actually printed the black on that one because we needed to use it to trap the green, the other colors.
Yeah, you need that sort of backlit white paper for the glow in the dark to show through.
Yeah, that's cool.
Very
That's
cool.
what I thought it was. I didn't want to assume. We didn't go
Sorry
over
about
that.
that.
Very cool. Paige, are you all out of questions from the field?
I have one more question that I think we'll kind of finish out with, unless there's something that you wanted to show. And that was, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to direct people to David has done an amazing job of curating our Instagram. So if you want to see more of our work there, because this is just like a tiny fraction, and Tony's been printing nonstop for like over 10 years. So he's done a lot. But you could check our Instagram, which is at Serio Press.
Cool.
Yes, and your website, you have a lot of good information there too.
Yes, I forget about that.
I know, it's like I go to people's Instagrams first too. It's so funny.
I live on that Instagram.
Paige, how are we on time? Are we
We're
all right?
gonna finish up with this last question. And this is actually just something I posted on Instagram, was about deckled edges, and everyone loves a deckled edge. How often or how important is it to artists for them to have a deckled edge on their prints?
So the deckled edge is as a purely aesthetic choice. And I'm proud of the way that we deckle. We had a client who specifically reached out to us because he said that he was having a really hard time getting a good printer who could deckle his prints well.
Really?
And we were doing it so long that I was kind of surprised. I was like, I don't understand what the problem is, but a lot of people use a decal bar that has like a wave in it, and it's like a pattern. And so what we use is a flat metal ruler that has like a bevel on one edge, and then we have on the other edge it's just straight.
Specifically called the decal bar.
It's a decal bar, and but it doesn't have like that pattern of a decal in it. And if you have a good paper, you can just tear it at an angle and it'll create a really nice deckled edge.
Yeah.
But I would say we deckle like 75% of our prints, and then like I would say 25% of the people want to have a cut edge because they're looking for that aesthetic.
Yeah, and obviously, Trent, it's if you're floating it, deckle makes sense.
Yeah.
And it showcases the quality and the fibers of the paper.
Yeah, yeah.
You get these really kind of nasty big tears in the paper. It looks beautiful. It depends on the artwork. Sometimes it needs to be cut, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But also sometimes people want to keep that natural decal from the paper making, which is even like a more kind of I guess not more beautiful, but it's a really nice looking kind of edge.
Now, do you guys put, Tony, do you put a chop mark in your prints, or you don't?
We use them on our publications, but we don't force them on our clients.
You don't. Okay.
Yeah.
But you do have a Serio chop mark. I mean,
yeah. If people request it, we'll use it. Otherwise, we definitely use it on our publications.
Got it.